Welcome to Professor Sky's class, Haiti, the most important country in the world. This should be the 25th lecture, and today I'm talking all about zombies, which, for better and mostly worse, is the most famous thing about Haiti in terms of culture. This is kind of our culture week. Next class will be all about music. Will be about the language. Last class was about the faith of Vodou, but now we're talking about its most spectacular and fringe aspects that have become so popular throughout the world. As always, I'm going to be very conscious to point out systemic racism where I see it. I think the fact that the way that zombies have been used first was to put down Haitian people and to justify their subjugation. And then secondly, it was just straight up stolen from them and changed and appropriated for the desires of white artists. So that's the basic area that this is going. So let's get to my PowerPoint of this class right now. I'll continue to share. All right. Students and friends, I am Professor Sky. My name is perhaps known to you. I've undertaken to teach about Haiti. I want curiosity and a thirst for complex understanding to reign in this class. I am working to help that happen. Unite yourselves, students like Weber and Nemours right there, and learn with me for the same cause. If you want to take notes, I suggest it. We're going to learn some pretty interesting stuff. I'm just going to call this class Zombie because that's what this class is about. Just a little reminder, my last video was about Vodou. And I went to Spirit Halloween. Now, this is from a couple years ago, and they are still selling voodoo magic costumes. They got rid of, thank God, a whole bunch of other different kinds of cultural appropriation of natives and other people, but this for somehow ends up being seen as okay. And this is where I will remind you of the thesis of last class. The rejection, demonizing, and ridiculing of any African or African-derived religions are weapons used against people of African descent, a tool of white supremacy. And it's right there at Spirit Halloween, right where there used to be a Blockbuster video. So zombie. I gave this quote in the last class. I think it's very useful. It is the most popular Haitian word, and that is a reflection of the world more than it is of Haiti. The fact that before this class, probably the only thing you knew really about Vodou was that it had something to do with zombies. You didn't know about Dambala, you didn't know about the Loire, you didn't know about the people of Benin, you didn't know about the syncretization, you didn't know about the ceremonies, you didn't know about the drums and the dancing and all that. All you knew was this one thing, which has just been taken, flipped around, reversed, and bastardized. And that says a lot more about us than it does about the people of Haiti and what they believe. But let's get to it. Let's get to this faith. Because the thing is, zombie used to mean something else before October 1968. October 1968, a very sharp fella from Pittsburgh released a independent movie, which would go on to change the world forever and go on to change the meaning of the word zombie, Night of the Living Dead. A very popular movie, a movie which recategorized the way that people think about zombies. They changed the metaphor. It was a metaphor for something, and then it became about a metaphor for something else. I'll explain both of those right now. This was the homework for my students to watch White Zombie, which is available right here on YouTube, copyright free. I Walked with the Zombie is available on some sketchy websites. I don't recommend watching it. What I really want to do, and what I want to emphasize to you as well, this is how I'm introducing the American occupation of Haiti with two American movies, one made during and one made very soon after the American occupation. How they represent, how they show the ways in which people perceive of Haitians will then go on to justify their mistreatment by our government and by our army. All right? It's all part of it. Culture and life is always intertwined. So, zombies. If we go by a sort of very neutral definition of what they are, zombie are people whose decease has been duly recorded and whose burial has been witnessed, but who are found a few years later living with Boko or Bokors in a state verging on idiocy. Interestingly, some of the most stirring and first-person reports about zombies come from Zora Neale Hurston. You read Their Eyes Were Watching God back in high school, didn't you? like one of the great American authors, and she was also an anthropologist, and she also traveled around Jamaica, and she also traveled around Haiti, and she also happened to be the first person to ever take a photograph of an alleged zombie. Do you want to hear her talk about it? Because she talked about it on tape. I've got the recording right here. And then while you're listening, can you please think about what this sounds like this is a metaphor for? What is the zombie about? Because right now, spoiler alert, zombies are mostly about our fears of contagion, ooh, and our fears of consuming too much. What is this about?
Well, when you got to the zombie, I noticed you kind of left her or him out of this book. That was in your other book.
Yes, well, I thought I'd said enough about the zombie. It had been talked about, and the book had come out in England, and caused a sensation over there, too. And I'd been on We the People and talked about zombies, and I'd been out in Hollywood, and Arthur Hornblow hired me after reading my book, Tell My Horse, and I talked about zombies so much out there, and the Seth Woosh, and...
Well, I never heard you talk about them, did you, Vincent?
No, I haven't.
Talk about the zombie just a wee little bit.
Well, a zombie is supposed to be the living dead. People who die and are resurrected, but without their souls. And they can take orders, and they're supposed to be never to be tired, and to do what the master says without cease and without being tired. Naturally, it would be futile for me to attempt to try to explain everything. I do know that people have been resurrected in Haiti. I do not believe that they were actually dead. I believe it was suspended animation. And since there's no embalming there, it's possible. And since people are not buried below ground, they have the above ground vaults as they do in New Orleans. And they take corpses out. It's been proven. There have been cases.
So it's fascinating. I suggest tracking that down if you want to hear the whole thing. She goes on to describe in some detail all about how you have to revive them and walk them by their house and all these kinds of ideas. But I hope the metaphor is starting to come clear to you. The spark of life which sorcerers wake in a corpse does not wholly give the dead man back his place in the society of men. A zombie remains in that misty zone which divides life from death. He moves, eats, hears what is said to him, even speaks, but he has no memory and no knowledge of his condition. The zombie is a beast of burden, which his master exploits without mercy, making him work in the fields, weighing him down with labor, whipping him freely, and feeding him on meager, tasteless food. A zombie's life is seen in terms which echo the harsh existence of a slave in the old colony of Santo Domingo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the answer to that question. What role did they serve? They served the role of fears of slavery. Like, if you've been following this class, please, if this is the only class you watch, go back. Because the entire history of post slavery Haiti is the people in power, the elites and the presidents and the governors and the emperors and the kings, all of them trying to get the Haitians back onto the plantations to resuscitate the colonial economy, because that's the only way that they can have a GDP and really partake in the world stage and avoid poverty on a sort of a mass level. All that, like the success of Haiti really would have been helped greatly had they actually had some kind of return to a colonial economy. But what's the last thing you want to do if you were dragged here on a boat against your will and forced to work in the sugar fields and get cut by the little sugar cane and get burned by the boiling sugar? The last thing you want to do is go back into the fields. So this metaphor, this spiritual practice, which I'm sure some people think exists, and I'm sure some people are like Zora Neale Hurston, it's like it's probably just, some kind of like state of suspended animation. These kinds of things happen. It's possible, right? It's not that crazy of an idea. The importance to me is the psychological function that it plays. You see, now we fear the zombie because it's contagion. In the past, it was fears of conversion. Conversion, where imagine you are forced onto a ship, You have to work 12 hours a day. You fight like hell for your freedom. You're finally free. The people in power try to force you back onto the sugar cane, and then you die. And then, depending on your faith, maybe you believe that you go back to Africa and some kind of sort of African diasporic belief of Africa is like a kind of afterlife of heaven. Or maybe you believe in Christianity and you go up and you're there and they're playing harps and they got the wings and the angels. Or maybe some kind of hybrid of both, probably most likely. But just as you're there, just as you're about to receive the repose of death after a long life of struggling for freedom and suffering under a lack of it, you are brought out of the dead and forced to work forever and get whipped and be pushed around and go back into the fields and do it. It is a beautifully constructed, conceived of, perfect metaphor to represent the things that the Haitians feared the most: going back into the fields, going back to slavery. It's why they built the citadel. So, like, it's fascinating. But what happens with, let's be honest, what happens with white artists who see this? They don't see all of this story. They go, ooh, cool, dead people. Let's get back to the story. It is generally believed that Hungan know the secret of certain drugs which can induce such a profound state of lethargy to be indistinguishable from death. From time to time, a story crops up. Okay. This is where, too, I mentioned this in the last class. Usually the term that's used is Bokor. So, okay. Zora Neale Hurston says this. Other people say this as well. In general, Hungan are perceived of as being positive voodoo priests, and Bokor as being more negative, Bokor being more self-serving, Hungan being sort of more helpful. But anyway, so that's the basic idea. A Hungan or a Bokor would have this ability if they are in touch with the kind of darker side, not darker, the more nefarious side of Vodou. Yeah, that all comes from this book by Alfred Netro. So zombies, they're on the fringe of the voodoo religion. A Boko creates a potion, victims declared dead. The Boko digs them up, does a ceremony, bam, you got a zombie. Apparently you can't give them salt or else they wake up. Now listen, I love zombie movies. My favorite zombie movie is the remake of Dawn of the Dead. I'm sorry, everybody. I've seen the original. I happen to like the remake more. But like zombie movies, that's what they used to mean. But zombie movie used to mean something else as well before that nice Pittsburghian put down his Prometheus long enough to create a new genre of cinema. We had zombie movies of the past. Again, it was the fear of becoming a zombie, not being attacked by one. Fear of conversion, not contagion. So the first zombie movie is called White Zombie. I dare you to come and see me, says Bela Lugosi. Yeah, he was famous for playing Dracula, but he also played this character here, a guy named Murder. I've been to Budapest and I saw a great sculpture of Bela Lugosi there. So, the first zombie movie, White Zombie. Even back then, they had to make sure that they called it white to not scare away the white audience. Okay, I'm really gonna be driving this home, this concept of how much this concept has been stolen and taken away and used as a tool. So it's based on William Seabrook's book, and it's made during the occupation, the same way that Seabrook's book was written during the occupation. Now we have to talk about this book. It's now in public domain, so you can read it, print it out, do what you want with it. It's an exploration of Vodou. It's an exploration of zombies, and it is exoticizing the island of Haiti, calling them blood maddened and sex maddened. Now, I don't know if you need to hear this. A lot of people need to hear this. The term exotic is a racial slur. I'm sorry, that's just what it is. Maybe you used the term and you didn't know. Maybe you saw somebody and thought they looked different and thought they looked pretty, and so you said exotic. Exotic is a form of dehumanizing. It's a form of seeing somebody and pointing out their otherness, being attracted to otherness. And on a fundamental level, when you say someone is exotic, you are saying they are subhuman. They are not the same as you. They are other. That's what it means to call something exotic. And this book is a perfect example of exoticism. And one could also say, probably a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant might be a little bit uptight with sex. The book is very horny. And one could argue, and I would argue, that it justifies the American occupation because the people of Haiti are presented as being superstitious, sex maddened, blood maddened, in need of that civilizing mission of good old Uncle Sam correcting the children of the world. And as it said in the New York Herald Tribune, giving them a good licking, meaning like hit. And in this condition, zombies are, for the first time, really stolen from the Haitian culture and being used to make money for just some white guy. They are used to mock and dehumanize Haitians. It's not about the connection to the past and the connection to slavery. It's about look at the crazy things these crazy people believe. It reduces a full faith to witchcraft. Think about the faith you believe in, okay? If you have any faith at all. Think about the most outlandish fringe belief that some people in your faith believe and others don't. That is the representation of your whole faith. So let's pretend you're Christian. And you have to go, I don't know, you're a slave on Mars, right? You get enslaved, you're an enslaved person on Mars. And all anyone wants to talk about is the fact that someone once saw a picture of Jesus on a piece of toast and they worshiped it. And it's like you have to keep explaining, like, yeah, no, I don't really, I mean, I believe in Jesus, but I don't really believe that like the toast, like that kind of signs, like I don't really believe in that stuff. I mean, I get it. It's right. Imagine if your entire faith, from the Nicene Creed to the Ten Commandments, all of it was reduced to one fringe element that made you look ridiculous in the eyes of others who couldn't contextualize it properly. If you can't contextualize the zombie as being a representation of post-slavery fear, then it's just kind of what does it mean? It loses its actual deeper social, cultural meaning. Not only does it reduce the full faith to witchcraft, it reduces this perceived act of witchcraft to nothing more than witchcraft. And it completely transforms for white consumption. White consumption. White zombie. They had to call it white in order to make money. White zombie, more like white Bokor. Check out my PowerPoint. Check out my Photoshop skills. You can barely even tell. Look at that, white Bokor. Because this is the star of the movie, Bela Lugosi. He, what the hell? Why is there a white Bokor? I guess they didn't think that they could have a black star who could pull the movie off. So they just decided to say, okay, we want all of the exoticization, all of the dehumanizing, but let's just put it with a movie star. And of course, we can't have a black movie star, so we'll just have it be him. Now, there are white zombies in the movie. Most of the prominent zombies in the movie are white zombies. They are rivals of the Bokor. So, why? They have to emphasize it for money. I wish I could show this to you, but I can't. I'm going to be showing you stills and describing to you the scenes. But this is the moment at 4 minutes and 18 seconds. You can find it on YouTube. I'll include a link to it in the description if I don't forget, where zombies are explained for the first time. And there's often in these movies that take place in what is perceived of as, far away and exotic, disgusting word intentionally used, exotic locales. Although if you describe a place as exotic, there's no problem, right? Because you're not describing a person. You can describe a place as exotic, of course, but you can't describe a person as exotic. Okay. There's usually the driver, the person who takes them from the dock, from the airport to the place where the action happens. And that's like their first contact with authentic culture. In this case, it's this driver who explains when he sees them that they are undead. And so for the first time in movie history, we have the word zombie uttered on screen, and we have a description of what they are. As much as I want to say this movie is just bad and it's just all these things, it has this amazing scene, which I wish I could share with you. I wish I could. Because not only are there white zombies, but there are black zombies. And those black zombies work at a sugar mill. And they just slowly walk and put in sugarcane into these machines that are being pushed by people underneath, and they have soulless eyes, and one of them just falls into the machine and they don't even stop. And it's a chilling reminder of what it was actually like during slavery, how little human life mattered, how much what they were looking for in the workers or these forced laborers was to have them just be as automatic as possible. It's an amazing scene. It's a great scene locked in the middle of a rather problematic movie. So I really highly suggest you watch it. It is a trip through the sugar mill of the Bokor. And also, it's pretty interesting to note that the person who owns the sugar mill is also the evil Bokor. Whoa, I need to animate this slide. Sorry. I do these things for free, right? You're getting a free education with this, you know? So, you're gonna have to wait for me to animate my slides from time to time. I hope it's all good. Hope you're doing well. Smash the like bucket, subscribe, you know. All right. And now we have a whole different story with 1943's I Walked with a Zombie. If you're going to allow me, please allow me to just talk a little bit like a movie nerd, because this movie rules. This is a great movie. The title came first, and the movie came second. That's pretty funny. It's got a great American producer, Val Lewton, and a great French director, Jacques Tourneur. I hope that the irony is not lost on you that one of the earliest movies about zombies is directed by a French person and produced by an American. It is considered a great movie, number 76 horror movie of all time in Variety, but they put The Ruins at number 75, so man, this movie's got to be higher than that. This movie's amazing. It's based on Jane Eyre, the Charlotte Bronte book. It's really cool. It's a really cool take with zombieism replacing insanity. Fascinating. It is an exploitation of Haitian culture with stereotypes, for sure. For sure it is. But it's also a surprising movie about the exploitation of Haitians. It's not a perfect movie, right? It's still a movie made by white people for white audiences using black mythology and black history to sell tickets. I'm not saying it's woke, but for 1943, it actually has a lot of interest, not just how beautifully it's filmed and how well it's acted, especially compared to White Zombie, where the acting is just terrible in that movie. But I'm going to take you through it. Okay. I'm going to take you through it. So it starts off, and we have the Jane Eyre character. I think her name is Becky. She's a Canadian, and she shows up to get a job at the sugar company. And she takes the job as long as she doesn't believe in witchcraft. That is what she's asked. She's taken on a boat to the place. Is this intentional? This oldie-timey boat? This isn't a steamship? I think it's intentional. I think they're trying to remind us of slavery. I think that's what they're trying to do. But you're going to see that they probably are. Okay? We have this scene there's these two brothers who own this plantation. And you have the older one and the younger one. And the older ones have like Rochester from Jane Eyre, just kind of a creep. And she thinks how beautiful it is, and he comes up and says, "It's not beautiful. You just don't understand. There's no beauty here, only death and decay." So that's the way that it's presented. That's the horrific aspect. We have this character, once again, the driver who is taking and who tells the whole story. But unlike the other driver, he doesn't tell the story of zombies. He tells the story of hate. Saint Sebastian. I'm sorry. It takes place in Saint Sebastian. So it's not supposed to. Okay, one second. It's not technically Haiti. It's technically a country called San Sebastian. I think it's supposed to be Haiti. I don't think there's any other way of reading this, especially since we're talking about voodoo. We're talking about Vodou, and we're talking about a former colony and all that. And Saint-Domingue is kind of close to San Sebastian, but for some reason they decided not to call it Haiti. White Zombie called it Haiti. This one they didn't. So, anyways, what's fascinating is we actually get a lesson on the transatlantic slave trade multiple times. This is, 80 years after the Civil War, but way before the Civil Rights Act. All right. A movie like this couldn't be made now because you're not allowed to talk about slavery anymore, right? Driver. The Hollands, who she's going to go work for, brought the black folk here on T Misery, the name of the slave ship. The long ago fathers and the long ago mothers of us all chained to the bottom of the boat. Oh, whoa, right off the bat, we have the whole story of the island. She's going to go work for the former masters who still own the land and the property. Now, okay, maybe that's not like Haiti, thanks to Dessalines. And then she says, they brought you to a beautiful place, didn't they? This is woke. This is based. This is awesome. That when confronted with the realities of transatlantic slave trade that you are directly benefiting from, you can't even like register it. You can't even say, "Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry," or "Oh, that's terrible that happened." And what about reparations? Just say, "Gee, it sure is nice here." And what does he say? What does he say? What does the best character in this whole damn movie say? If you say, miss, if you say, just like, all right. Hey, the guy went to school in Buffalo. A lot of my students are from Buffalo. The jungle drums, mysterious and eerie, but it's the work drum. The younger brother is the one who works actually at the sugar mill where this is all taking place. And we had this beautiful scene. Just if you've never seen this movie, oh my God, they go into the tower and we have the discovery. Instead of having a crazy wife in the attic, the Rochester character, the Holland character in this book, has a zombified wife, which means it is a white zombie. Of course, once again, we've got to have the white zombie. Now, I'm not going to go into some sort of extended feminist study of the way in which femininity is portrayed in this movie and tying it together with the way femininity was represented in Jane Eyre and about the constraints of marriage and what's expected of somebody in a colonial system. There's a whole series of papers that have probably already been written or could be written, but let's just say we've got another white zombie. Then we have a scene in front of this very important sculpture, this wooden sculpture, which you might have a hard time seeing. Okay, it's right here of Saint Sebastian, the Christian saint who was martyred by being shot with arrows. It was the figurehead of a slave ship. That's where our people came from. Hey, what do you mean our? Isn't this interesting? That's where our people came from. A white person saying that's where our people came from, implying that like white people also suffered from slavery. Interesting stuff. This is a sad place. She's surprised to find out that her patient, she's there to care for the wife, is a mental case. And then the doctor straight up says zombie. I believe for the first time in the movie, she makes a beautiful zombie, doesn't she? He just says it out loud, but it seems like he's joking. Eventually, they talk about what is a zombie, a ghost, the living dead. Is this where George A. Romero got the term Night of the Living Dead? I think so. It's also a drink. You feel nothing and you know nothing. So, right off the bat, somebody who is supposed to represent Western science, Western wisdom, a lack of superstition, says that this is not a zombie. But the first thing he says is that she's a zombie, isn't she? So, we then have one of the best moments in the movie where singer Sir Lancelot, who is not Haitian, but a great calypso singer, writes a song that's going to tell the story of the whole movie. I'm telling you, this movie is great because he tells the whole story about slavery. There was a family that lived on the Isle of Saint Sebastian a long, long while. Oh, woe, ah me, shame and sorrow for the family. Tells all about how they made people work. And now he's singing a song. Her eyes are empty and she cannot talk, and the nurse has come to make her walk. The brothers are lonely and the nurse is young, so now you must know that my song is sung. An amazing piece of metatextual information about what's happening. Someone singing about what we're seeing. Brilliant, brilliant movie. We have an entire explanation of what voodoo is, that Ahun Fort is a voodoo temple, refers to Dambala as the big Papa God. Of course, that's not true. Bon Dieu is the Papa God. Dambala is a Loa. Dambala is one of the most important Loa, but he's not actually a Papa of the rest of them. And he asks, aren't you afraid of Vodou? That's what I mean. She asks, aren't you afraid of Vodou? And this is one thing I really like about the movie. It does try to scare you with Vodou, but the character says, "Oh, it's not very frightening, singing and dancing and carrying on." Then, as I understand it, one of the gods, what he means is spirits or Loa, comes down and speaks through one of the people. Not actually that bad of a description. God is not correct. Dambala is not the Papa, but beyond that, for a 1943 movie, this is a fairly good explanation of what your attitude should be about Vodou. It's not frightening. A lot of dancing, a lot of singing, hoping to be in contact and to serve the Loa. That's like the majority. I just did a whole hour video about that 2 days ago. Just about this. But he just described it super well. And then we have the scene where she hears it from the servant. Again, part of the problems of this movie is back in the old days, there were no roles for people of African descent in movies, unless they were just servants like this person. But she describes the Hungan will speak to the Rada drums, the drums will speak to Legba and Dambala, and there will be better doctors. This is where I just want to take a second. A lot of my students are in the nursing program, a lot of students right now in the nursing program. And this is like one of the greatest nurses in movie history because she just really wants to help her patient. So she said, I can't fix her. If there is something that might fix her, if there is a better doctor, then I'm going to go and find a better doctor, even if that doctor is a Hungan or even a Bokor. This movie, it's so rich. How do you expect to get into heaven with one foot in the voodoo home for and the other in the church? It's still problematic. It still has a lot of these aspects that show a colonialist mocking of voodoo. At the Hunfor, they go and they are met by a guardian. First, they have to journey through the sugar cane, because of course they do. But before we get to the guardian, before we get to the guy, let's go back to Saint Sebastian, because this movie's pretty deep here. Who is Saint Sebastian? What does he represent? Well, if you will remember, there's a thing called syncretism, which is where more than one faith are combined at the same time. And in Haitian Vodou, different loa, different spirits are represented by different saints in the Catholic tradition. So Saint Sebastian is syncretized with grand bois, big woods, an elemental loa closely associated with trees and herbs. Offering him include herbs, honey, as Petro Loa and Loa wilderness can be fierce and unpredictable in some aspects. Grand Bois, Maître Carrefour, and Baron Cimetière form the triad of magicians. They represent the journey of life. Grand Bois represents the rich earth that you spring from. So Saint Sebastian, the island itself, and the figurehead is where it comes from. Everybody on this island came from Saint Sebastian, came from the slave ships, white and black alike. They all, and colored, they all came from the slave ships. That's the earth which they come from. Maître Carrefour represents the various roads and paths you choose to travel on, and Baron Cimetière represents the end of the trip. So Carrefour is one of the petro aspects of the spirit Legba, often as a young man or as a demon, sometimes syncretized with Satan. His name indicates he also controls the crossroads between the earth and the spiritual realm. He's sometimes represented just by a cross, like a cross. He has the power to grant or deny access to all other Loa. Is there Carrefour in this movie? Yes, his name straight up is Carrefour. That's his name. His name is Crossroads. Is there Baron Cimetière? Well, I don't know. I don't know. The spirit of the dead, guarding the cemetery, protecting the graves, wears a tuxedo, tails, and top hat. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's supposed to be him. I don't think it is. I don't think this movie goes that deep. But anyways, we have a beautiful home for scene again where it's not accurate. It's not actual Haitian drummers. It's not actual Haitian dancing, but it is not done for laughs. It is not done for scares. It is just done as a representation of a scene of how they see faiths. Okay. And then what do you know? The mom of one of the brothers is there. The person who runs the medical facility is there, and she says that she likes to use let the gods speak through her in order to help the people. She talks about Vodou. But wait a minute. Does that mean that she is a white Bokor? Yeah, it is, because it turns out she's the one who zombified the lady. It's another white Bokor, another white zombie. We have this beautiful scene where Carrefour is trained to go get the zombified wife until he's sent back. One of the best scenes in the movie. That's out of focus scene. This is, of course, also problematic because it is essentially just trying to make a black face into something that makes you scared, but it's also played up the eyes and everything. It's a very effective scene. We have a scene in which the protagonist, the nurse, is has a dream, and in that dream, the grate of the window appears onto her, and this must be intentional. This must be an attempt to tie into the Veve, the representations of the Loa. Is she not being marked by the Vodou in this moment? I think she is. We have a scene where the priest, I don't know if we're saying Bokor or Hongun, brings the wife to him. The nurse is asked to kill, to put out of her misery, to put the zombified wife out of her misery. And she says, I have a Hippocratic oath, I cannot. Right? You can't kill somebody if you're a doctor. And then we had this amazing moment where in the ritual, someone pokes the doll. And then in reality, he stabs her and he takes her into the water. And the movie ends with an amazing moment in which there's a prayer to the Christian God talking about her selfishness. And we don't know. Was it suicide? Is it spiritual? Did anything supernatural happen at all in this movie? I don't know. But this is a great movie, a fascinating example of how the zombie mythos can be used well and not well at the same time, until eventually zombieism is just going to be turned into a metaphor for consuming. That's all it is. It's a metaphor now for consuming, fears of consuming taking over our lives and replacing our spiritual life with bodily needs. And it's also a fear of contagion and all that stuff, and living in a globalized society. But it used to mean something much more. My computer's about to run out of energy. I hope you enjoyed this little exploration into early zombie movies and the ways in which zombies were taken from a fraction of a faith to a bastardized representation of that faith and then taken away entirely. Thank you all for watching. Come next time for some music. There's the camera.